Have you ever noticed how some people move through life with quiet stability, while others are always fighting fires, chasing peace, and wondering why nothing ever seems to work out? It looks like luck from the outside, or talent, or privilege, but it's none of those. The real difference is something far less dramatic and far more uncomfortable. Control. Not control over people, not control over circumstances, control over the few things that quietly shape everything else. Most people think their life is falling apart because of bad timing, difficult people, or unfair situations. But beneath all of that, there's a deeper truth most never face. Your life is not chaotic. It's ungoverned. Every outcome you're living right now, your stress, your relationships, your finances, your sense of direction can be traced back to 4 internal domains you either command or surrender. Your mouth, your mind, your mood, your money. Ignore them, and they will run your life without mercy. Master them, and life begins to feel strangely quieter, clearer, lighter. This isn't about becoming rigid or emotionless. It's about reclaiming authorship, because the moment you stop reacting and start regulating, everything changes. Not overnight, not magically, but permanently, and it always starts the same way. With awareness, with the uncomfortable realization that the power you've been waiting for was never missing. It was unmanaged. So before we talk about success, before discipline, before freedom, we need to talk about control, the quiet kind, the kind no one applauds but everyone feels. And it begins with the first gate you open every single day, your mouth. Before you ever lose control of your life, you lose control of your words. Not in one dramatic moment, but quietly, sentence by sentence, thought by thought. Most people don't realize this because talking feels harmless. It feels automatic. But your mouth is not just a way to express reality. It is one of the primary tools that creates it. Every word you speak is a decision. It either moves you forward or slowly pulls you backward. There is no neutral language. Even silence, when chosen unconsciously, carries weight. Think about how often people speak without intention. Complaints disguised as honesty, negativity masked as realism, jokes that quietly undermine confidence. Repeated phrases like, "This always happens to me," or "That's just how I am." Over time, these words stop being expressions and start becoming instructions to the mind, to behavior, to identity. Your brain listens to what you say, even when you think no one else is, especially then. When you speak, you are giving your nervous system a direction. Words can calm you or agitate you. They can shrink your world or expand it. This is why 2 people can face the same circumstances and experience completely different lives. One speaks despair. The other speaks responsibility. One feeds chaos. The other feeds clarity. This isn't about pretending everything is fine. It's about precision. Power comes from speaking what is true without poisoning yourself in the process. Saying, "This is hard," is honest. Saying, "This always ruins everything," is destructive. One keeps you grounded. The other trains helplessness. And it doesn't stop with how you speak to others. The most influential voice in your life is the one you never hear out loud, your self-talk. The running commentary behind every decision. The tone you use with yourself when no one is watching. If that voice is constantly harsh, dismissive, or hopeless, no amount of external motivation will save you. You'll sabotage progress before it has a chance to stabilize. But when you learn to speak to yourself with firmness and respect, something shifts. You stop leaking energy. You stop arguing with reality. You conserve strength. Controlling your mouth doesn't mean becoming silent. It means becoming deliberate. It means pausing just long enough to ask, is this necessary? Is this accurate? Is this useful? Because once words leave you, they don't disappear. They linger. They echo. They return. When you master your mouth, you create a stable, internal environment. And that stability is what allows the next level of control to emerge. Because once your words stop fueling chaos, you begin to notice something else clearly. Your thoughts. And that's where the real battle begins. Once your words are no longer leaking energy, you start to hear what's been running beneath them all along your thoughts. This is where most people lose the fight, not because life is overwhelming, but because their own mind has been left untrained. Your mind is not a peaceful place by default. It's a survival machine. It scans for danger, replays past pain, imagines future threats, and fills the quiet with noise. If you don't take control of that process, your thoughts will decide your direction for you quietly, persistently, and without your permission. Every outcome in your life begins as a thought, not an action, not a habit, a thought. What you believe is possible. What you assume will happen. What you tell yourself something means. That internal interpretation becomes emotion. Emotion becomes behavior. Behavior becomes destiny. Most people never interrupt this chain. They believe every thought that enters their mind, as if it were truth. But thoughts are not facts. They are suggestions. And many of them are outdated, fear-based, or learned from moments when you were weaker than you are now. If you constantly replay worst-case scenarios, your nervous system stays in a state of threat. If you rehearse failure in your head, your body prepares to quit. If you repeatedly think, "I'm behind," or "I'm not built for this," your actions will quietly align with that belief. Control doesn't mean eliminating negative thoughts. That's impossible. Control means noticing them without obeying them. It means creating a pause between the thought and the reaction. That pause is where power lives. Training your mind is no different than training your body. Repetition matters. Environment matters. What you consume matters. If you fill your mind with constant noise, endless scrolling, outrage, comparison, shallow distraction, you weaken your ability to focus and regulate emotion. A scattered mind produces a scattered life. But when you start feeding your mind with stillness, with intentional learning, with silence, something stabilizes. You begin to recognize patterns. You see which thoughts drain you and which ones move you forward. You stop fighting every thought and start choosing which ones deserve attention. Visualization plays a role here, not as fantasy, but as orientation. When you consistently picture the version of yourself who is calm under pressure, disciplined in chaos, and steady in uncertainty, your mind starts adjusting toward that identity. You don't rise to your goals. You fall to your self-image. And discipline begins in the smallest moments. Catching a thought before it spirals. Reframing instead of reacting. Asking, "Is this useful right now?" instead of, "Is this true?" Because usefulness, not perfection, is what builds control. When your mind becomes more ordered, something else becomes obvious. You start to feel your emotions more clearly. Not louder, but cleaner. And that leads directly to the next layer most people never master. Your mood. Once your thoughts slow down and become more intentional, you begin to notice something else with clarity, your emotional state, your mood. This is where many people believe they have no control, and that belief alone keeps them trapped. Your mood feels automatic, but it isn't. It feels reactive, but it doesn't have to be. Most people live at the mercy of their emotions because they've never been taught the difference between feeling something and becoming it. A bad mood doesn't ruin a day. What ruins the day is identifying with the mood and letting it drive every response that follows. Your mood is not who you are. It's a temporary state passing through your nervous system. Like weather, it changes unless you cling to it, analyze it, and feed it with stories. That's when a moment becomes a mindset. Think about how often a small trigger sets the tone for everything else. A comment, a delay, a memory. Suddenly, patience disappears. perspective collapses, and the day feels heavier than it needs to be. Not because of what happened, but because the mood was given control. Emotional mastery starts with awareness. You can't regulate what you don't notice. The moment you pause and silently ask, "What am I feeling right now?" you interrupt the automatic loop. That pause creates distance. Distance creates choice. And choice is power. Controlling your mood doesn't mean suppressing emotion. Suppression turns into pressure. Pressure eventually explodes. Control means allowing the emotion to exist without letting it dictate your behavior. You feel anger without becoming destructive. You feel sadness without sinking into hopelessness. You feel stress without spreading it. Breath is your fastest regulator. Slow, deliberate breathing sends a signal to your body that you are safe. Safety calms the nervous system. A calm nervous system gives you access to reason. This is not theory. This is biology. Gratitude also shifts mood not because it denies difficulty, but because it widens perspective. When you deliberately focus on what is stable, supportive, or still intact, your emotional baseline rises. You stop viewing life through a narrow lens of what's missing. Another overlooked factor is emotional contagion. Your mood affects others, and theirs affects you. If you constantly surround yourself with frustration, complaint, and pessimism, emotional stability becomes harder to maintain. Protecting your mood sometimes means protecting your environment. But the most important truth is this: your mood shapes your decisions. Decisions shape your outcomes. Outcomes shape your life. When you control your mood, you stop giving external events authority over your inner state. You become steady in situations that used to shake you. People begin to trust your presence. You move through chaos without becoming it. And once your words are intentional, your thoughts are disciplined, and your emotions are regulated, one final area determines whether your life feels free or constrained. Money, not as numbers but as behavior, identity, and control. That's where we go next. When your emotions are no longer running the show, you begin to see your relationship with money more clearly, and what you see is often uncomfortable. Not because money is evil or shallow, but because it exposes patterns most people avoid looking at. Money is rarely the real problem. Behavior is. Most people say they want financial freedom, but they live with financial noise, stress, impulse, avoidance. They check their balance only when forced to. They spend to soothe emotions. They earn without direction and wonder why peace never arrives. Money, like your mood, responds to awareness and intention. If you don't control your money, it will quietly control your choices. Where you work, how you live, what you tolerate, what you postpone, what you fear losing. Financial pressure doesn't just affect your wallet, it leaks into your relationships, your sleep, and your sense of self. But here's the truth most people never hear. Control is not about having more money. It's about clarity. A person earning little with structure often feels calmer than someone earning much with chaos. Because clarity creates stability, and stability creates freedom. Controlling your money begins with honesty. You must be willing to look without judgment at where your money actually goes. Not where you think it goes. Not where you wish it went. Where it truly goes. Awareness alone dissolves a surprising amount of stress. Then comes intention. Every dollar should have a purpose before it leaves your hands. Not because life should feel restrictive, but because direction removes anxiety. When your money has a plan, your mind relaxes. You stop reacting. You start deciding. Emotional spending is the most common trap. Stress leads to spending. Spending leads to regret. Regret leads to more stress. The cycle continues. The solution isn't shame, it's pause. Learning to sit with discomfort instead of numbing it with purchases. Saving is not deprivation. It's self-respect for your future self. An emergency fund isn't pessimism, it's peace. It allows you to face life's unpredictability without panic. And wealth, real wealth, isn't about appearance. It's about margin, options, time, the ability to say no, the ability to choose rest without fear, the ability to act from values instead of desperation. Money amplifies who you already are. When you control it, it becomes a tool. When you don't, it becomes a weight. You don't need perfection. You need consistency. Small, disciplined actions repeated quietly over time. That's how control is built. And when your words are intentional, your thoughts are disciplined, your mood is regulated, and your money is directed, you begin to notice something profound. Life stops feeling random. You stop reacting to chaos and start shaping direction. But there is one final piece that ties all of this together. One internal shift that turns control into character. That's where we go next.
At this point, something subtle begins to change. Control no longer feels like something you do. It starts to feel like something you are. Most people treat self-control as a temporary effort, something they try when things fall apart and abandon when life feels manageable again. But real control doesn't come from bursts of discipline. It comes from identity. You don't rise to the level of your goals. You fall to the level of who you believe you are. When control is tied to effort, it's fragile. Effort fades when you're tired, emotional, or distracted. But when control becomes part of your identity, it operates even when you're exhausted, even when no one is watching, even when old habits try to pull you back. This is why lasting change feels quiet. There's no dramatic announcement, no sudden transformation, just a shift in how you see yourself. You stop saying, "I'm trying to be disciplined," and start thinking, "I am someone who chooses deliberately." You stop saying, "I hope things change," and start living as someone who creates change. Identity shapes behavior automatically. If you see yourself as someone who respects their time, you protect it. If you see yourself as someone who speaks with intention, your words slow down. If you see yourself as someone who values peace, you stop inviting chaos. This is also where many people sabotage themselves. They cling to old identities because they feel familiar. Being overwhelmed becomes part of the personality. Being reactive feels normal. Even struggle can become comfortable when it's repeated long enough. But comfort is not alignment. To gain control, you must release the identity that thrives on disorder. You must let go of the version of yourself that uses chaos as an excuse, emotion as justification, and distraction as avoidance. This doesn't mean becoming rigid or cold. It means becoming grounded. A controlled person isn't tense. They are steady. They don't need to prove anything. They don't react to everything. They don't chase validation or panic when plans shift. They move from principle, not impulse. And this identity is built through small decisions honored daily. Keeping promises to yourself. Saying no when it's easier to say yes. Choosing rest without guilt. Choosing focus over noise. Each decision reinforces the identity. Each repetition strengthens it. Eventually, control becomes natural, effortless, almost invisible. And once control becomes identity, something remarkable happens. You stop needing motivation. You stop relying on moods. You stop waiting for the right moment. You act because it's who you are. And when identity stabilizes, the world responds differently. People sense it. Opportunities align with it. Life begins to meet you at your level. But control, when misunderstood, can turn into rigidity. And that's why the next section matters. Because true control is not force. It's flexibility without collapse. That's where we go next. When control becomes identity, there is a quiet risk most people never notice. The risk of becoming rigid, of mistaking discipline for hardness, of turning structure into tension. True control is not stiffness. It is adaptability without chaos. Rigid people break under pressure. Grounded people bend and return stronger. Life is unpredictable. No system, habit, or plan will unfold exactly as expected. When you believe control means everything must go your way, every disruption feels like failure. But when control is internal, external changes no longer threaten your stability. This is where many self-disciplined people lose balance. They become harsh with themselves. intolerant of mistakes, unforgiving of human emotion. They confuse control with suppression, and over time, that suppression builds pressure. Control is not about eliminating emotion, it's about not being ruled by it. It's not about never falling off course, it's about returning without self-attack. Flexibility is the ability to adjust without abandoning principles. You can change the plan without changing the direction. You can rest without quitting. You can feel without collapsing. This mindset protects you from burnout. When life throws unexpected weight at you, loss, delay, disappointment, you don't tighten. You soften. You slow your breath. You return to fundamentals, words, thoughts, mood, money. The foundations don't disappear just because conditions change. This is emotional intelligence in action. You respond instead of react. You ask better questions instead of making excuses. You adapt without losing self-respect. Flexibility also allows compassion for yourself and others. When you understand that control is internal, you stop needing to control people. You stop forcing outcomes. You lead with presence rather than pressure. This is why calm individuals often carry the most authority. Not because they dominate, but because they are not shaken. They don't rush to fill silence. They don't need to be right. They don't resist reality. They work with it. And in doing so, they conserve energy. Energy that others waste fighting what already is. Control with flexibility creates resilience. You recover faster. You learn quicker. You move forward without dragging shame behind you. And here's the deeper truth. Flexibility is a sign of trust. Trust in yourself. Trust in your foundation. Trust that a momentary setback does not erase your progress. When you master this balanced discipline with softness, structure with adaptability, you unlock a rare form of strength. A strength that doesn't exhaust you. A strength that compounds over time. And when strength becomes sustainable, your life begins to feel lighter, quieter, more intentional, which leads us to the final shift, the one where control stops feeling like work and starts feeling like freedom. That's where we go next. Control is not a destination you arrive at once. It's a rhythm you return to daily. Without practice, even the strongest foundations slowly erode, not dramatically, but quietly, through neglect. The goal is not perfection. The goal is consistency. Quiet control is maintained through simple, repeatable actions that anchor you when life pulls in every direction. These actions don't demand motivation. They create stability whether you feel inspired or not. The first practice is pause. Before speaking, before reacting, before spending, before deciding. A brief pause interrupts unconscious behavior and restores choice. Most mistakes are not caused by bad intentions, but by speed. Slow down just enough to regain awareness. The second practice is reflection. At the end of each day, ask yourself simple questions. Did my words add clarity or tension? Did my thoughts serve me or sabotage me? Did my emotions guide me or hijack me? Did my money reflect my values? Reflection isn't judgment, it's calibration. The third practice is subtraction. Control grows faster when you remove what drains you. Unnecessary noise, compulsive scrolling, draining conversations, commitments that no longer align. Every removal creates space. Space restores focus. The fourth practice is grounding. Return to the body. Breath, stillness, movement. A calm body stabilizes the mind. When your nervous system is regulated, control becomes natural rather than forced. The fifth practice is intention. Begin each day with one clear direction. Not a long list, one focus, one behavior to honor, one standard to uphold. This simplicity prevents overwhelm and sharpens discipline. The sixth practice is forgiveness. You will fail at times, you will react, you will slip. Control is not maintained by self-punishment. It is restored through accountability, without shame. Correct, adjust, continue. And finally, protect your environment. What you see, hear, and consume shapes you more than you realize. Choose inputs that reinforce clarity instead of chaos. Silence is not emptiness, it's nourishment. These practices do not announce themselves, they don't seek attention, but over time, they create an unshakable internal order. Life begins to feel less heavy, decisions feel cleaner, you trust yourself more. And trust is the quiet reward of control. Because when you trust yourself, fear loses leverage. Which brings us to the final section, the moment everything comes together, not as rules, but as a way of living. That's where we go next. There comes a point where you stop seeking control and realize you've been living it. Not because life became perfect, not because challenges disappeared, but because you no longer feel at the mercy of them. You speak with intention now. Words are chosen, not spilled. You understand that silence can be stronger than noise, and honesty stronger than reaction. Your mouth no longer creates fires you have to put out later. You think with clarity. Your mind is no longer a battlefield of endless worry and self-doubt. Thoughts come and go, but they don't own you. You choose what stays. You choose what grows. You regulate your emotions. Feelings pass through you without taking over. You no longer drown in frustration or cling to fleeting highs. You remain steady, especially when it matters most. You direct your money, not perfectly, but consciously. You know where it goes. You know why it moves. And because of that, it no longer controls your choices or your peace. This is what control looks like in real life. Quiet, stable, grounded. It doesn't seek validation. It doesn't announce itself. It shows up consistently in small decisions made daily. And over time, those decisions compound. Relationships deepen because people feel safe around you. Opportunities expand because you move with clarity instead of chaos. Confidence strengthens because you trust your own direction. Most importantly, you begin to experience freedom, not the loud kind that demands escape, but the calm kind that feels like home. You realize that control was never about domination or force. It was about responsibility, ownership, alignment. Nothing outside you needed to change first. You changed. And when you did, everything else followed. This is the life available to anyone willing to slow down, take responsibility, and choose deliberately. No shortcuts, nor noise. Just quiet strength, practiced daily. And once you live this way, you don't go back. Because you've learned something most people never do. The control you were searching for was never missing. It was waiting to be claimed.